The Star Wars galaxy, unsurprisingly, is in a near constant state of conflict. Meaning, if you sign up for the armed forces, you better be ready to see some action. So, it's your first naval assignment out of military college. The ship you're attached to may decide whether you see your next birthday. Get on to, say, a Mon Calamari star cruiser, and things aren't looking so bad. Getting assigned to one of the 5 ships we'll be talking about today is less good. So today specifically, we'll be looking at 5 starships you would not want to serve on. And I've tried to pick 5 options which each have some different inherent design flaw or problem with their usage. But let's get started. And just for the record, these are not in order. First off, we have the Nebulon B cruiser. Now, from a purely objective point, the Nebulon B is not that bad. The real problem was that the Rebel Alliance, who were most well known for using the ship, forced it into inappropriate roles due to resource scarcity. And this is the general flaw of being forced to use what you got available. Basically, although the Alliance did have higher tonnage vessels like Mon Calamari cruisers or assault frigates, Nebulon Bs were often used directly against large Imperial capital ships. Their purpose, however, was for anti-starfighter patrols and for light capital ship duties. Yet, because many Alliance fleets just didn't have that many ships, they were often forced to go head up against star destroyers, leading small task forces. So, although Nebulon B is perfectly suited for escorting a Mon Calamari cruiser, many would have been needlessly destroyed as they were thrown up against the star destroyers of the Empire. Now, this is made worse by the fact that the Nebulon B has a very obvious weak point, and even a bit of hull damage to the central portion of the ship could cause a catastrophic failure. So you've got a ship which admittedly does have some weird design choices, and you throw it against some high tonnage vessels, which Nebulon Bs often do, and you can understand why you might not want to get that assignment. We'll see something similar with later ships, but now let's move on. Number 2 is the Interdictor cruiser. Specifically, I want to focus here on the Immobilizer 418. Now, you might want to avoid service on an Interdictor for completely different reasons. The ship operates perfectly in its well-defined role, however, it's almost always the main target of a fleet trying to escape. So you're part of an Imperial fleet, and you've just interdicted a small rebel task force looking to escape. The only way to do so will be by destroying you, so you've now become the target for basically every enemy ship. Now, if you're a full-sized capital ship, like an Interdictor Star Destroyer, or some of the New Republic or GFFA's later Interdictor variants, which were basically merged into their capital ships, that's not so much of a problem. However, the Immobilizer 418 required extraordinary amounts of power relative to its size to generate the interdiction field, and was thus basically a sitting duck when using its technology. So not only do you have an entire enemy fleet wanting to destroy you, you're severely hamstrung with how you can defend yourself. And it's unsurprising that a lot of Star Wars Legends battles end with the good guys destroying the Interdictor, either through a cruiser, a starfighter run, or a suicidal corvette before jumping to hyperspace. Other high-valued targets would be transports or flagships, but I think the Interdictor really exemplifies the weakness here perfectly, especially because the ship is so valuable and not going anywhere soon. Next up, we have the Invincible class Dreadnought, which suffers from the weakness of just being really old. So the Invincible was first introduced about 3,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and even at that point, it lagged behind updates in military doctrine. They were huge, nearly 2 kilometers long, but not very well armed or armored, especially against small attack craft. However, despite being out of date 3,000 years ago, they still saw limited use even by the time of the Empire, and in fact, a whole task force of them was put under the command of Wolf Yularen. After that, most ships were sold off to the Corporate Sector Authority, but I have no doubt that some still patrolled the most remote regions of Imperial space. And I mean, the issues with that are obvious. You've got an ancient war vessel which isn't very well armed, but which is a huge target. Throw a couple squads of Rebel Y-Wings at it, and bye-bye capital ship. I mean, the Dreadnought class heavy cruiser is old, as were many other vessels which still saw service, but this thing is a whole nother level. Even as, say, a Corporate Sector Authority customs official, I don't think I'd want to be on that ship. It's just too ineffective, and I wouldn't feel very secure. Next up, we have the Recusant class destroyer, which isn't old, but which is cheap. So the Recusant was cheap, it wasn't super well armored or shielded, and the ship itself, as well as its weaponry systems, propulsion, etc., were all controlled by a fairly ineffective droid mind. And as we see in Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, a droid mind that can be quite stubborn. So you have a large ship which isn't really carrying its weight in firepower or shielding, which is fairly ineffective because of its droid brain, and which probably doesn't have any sort of self-preservation instincts. Thankfully, most of the time, there wouldn't have been many, if any, organic beings on the ship, but for anyone unlucky enough to get posted there, well, I don't feel too good about your chances. Also, like the Nebulon B, this ship was almost fragile, so if the shield goes down, which it often would due to the droid brain's aggressive nature, a few turbo laser shots and, well, you're done. Finally, we have the Lancer. Similar to the Nebulon B, it's a ship which could operate extremely well in a specific role, but which was usually used in a different way. Lancers were basically one of the Empire's attempted responses to rebel starfighters. They were armed to the teeth with point defense cannons, and you know what? They did their job very well. However, more often than not, the Empire chose instead to just rely on TIE fighters. They were a lot less expensive, and it was much more feasible for Star Destroyers to carry their anti-fighter assets with them. So Lancers were instead tasked with protecting Imperial planets, which didn't warrant a Star Destroyer, or otherwise doing patrol duties, basically anything that didn't necessitate a larger ship. The main problem with that, obviously, is that Lancers did not have even a single turbo laser battery, nor were they built to withstand turbo lasers. So if whatever they're guarding or attempting to intercept has more firepower than a starfighter, they're in pretty serious trouble. Even if that wasn't the case, I think operating an anti-starfighter vessel is pretty dangerous. I mean, in order to protect your capital ships, you need to be close to them, and if there's a big battle going on, that also means you'll likely be in range of the enemy capital ships. Given you are much weaker, just a couple of stray shots from a large cruiser means death to you and the rest of your crew. However, if the ships stay back, it means they won't be able to do their job well, so it's sort of a catch-22. Anyway guys, those are 5 ships that I don't think you'd want to serve on if you were a new cadet fresh out of the academy. However, those have just been my opinion. Is there one that you would include? Do you disagree with one of my selections? Do you have a question you'd like me to answer in a subsequent video? Let me know all of that and more down below. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.